Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Gen Z Unfiltered. I'm Ishkirat, and today I am joined by Dr. Harjeet Grewal, who is a sessional instructor teaching at University of Calgary's current Sikh Studies classes. I speak to him today to gain some insight into the plan to create a 3-year full-time appointment in Sikh Studies at University of Calgary, and eventually establishing a chair of Sikh Studies, making UFC a leading force in Sikh Studies in Canada. Please welcome Dr. Harjeet Grewal. Hello, Dr. Grewal. How are you today?
Hi, I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me, and hello to all your listeners as well.
Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure having you here, especially because I've been looking into the program myself and I am intrigued. I've seen it on social media and hearing about this potential collaboration of University of Calgary with the Sikh community here and building this long-term program. As a grade 12 student who is looking to go into university, I want to learn more. So first things first, what is your background and education in?
So I have a mixed background. I started off in studying molecular genetics. I have a specialization bachelor's in that, and from
Cool.
there, yeah. So it was, that was in the mid '90s when this was kind of new science, and it was really interesting to me. So I kind of followed through on that, but I kept studying. I would take extra courses and things like that. So I got really interested in humanities and questions of the social science and things like that, particularly with religion and South Asian religion. So I started to learn that there was programs not at University of Alberta, but in other parts of the country. So I actually went to UBC on the advice of a professor of mine, and I studied. I did another BA in area studies, so it was in Asian studies, and I focused on South Asian languages and South Asian religion and histories. Finished the BA, and I went on to do a master's. In the master's, I was focusing there. I started to focus more on research in the Sikh tradition. I was looking at a body of literature in the manuscripts that exist called Janam Sakhis. Those are stories or anecdotes about Guru Nanak, the first Sikh Guru. So I studied that, and I got really interested in kind of the thought patterns that exist in the Sikh tradition in comparison to some of the older traditions that are there on the ground during the 15th century and 16th century. And so I went on to do a PhD at the University of Michigan, still studying the Janam Sakhis, but I became more interested in kind of the logic behind the narrative and the structure of the narrative, and kind of why this type of storytelling is kind of forefronted after the Shri Guru Granth Sahib. This is kind of the second type of literature we see developing in the Sikh tradition. So they kind of got a question about what type of intellectual tradition do we have in the Sikh tradition, where these are the key texts, and it continues to develop in these ways for many centuries. Then I came and started teaching at University of Calgary in 2017. So it was, it sounds quick, but that was about a 20-some year journey.
Well, I think that's amazing. You are very well educated to say like the least of it, and your background is so cool and so fascinating for me.
Thank you,
So
thank you.
you said that you are a professor for Sikh Studies at University of Calgary. So with your experience, what is the importance of bringing any type of religious studies to post-secondary education, and what purpose does it serve in terms of building credibility and understanding?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so I think that, we have since especially since the turning of the new millennium in the 2000s, religion has been forefronted across the globe. And it's something that people in many societies, are kind of thinking about in terms of interpersonally, the interrelations we have and how religion works in that space, as well as in the public sphere. So that's one level where religion is important. And then the second level is how we can use the university space as a place where people can learn about these things in kind of an open and productive way, where there's a safe place to have a discussion and conversations. So the bringing in of any religion and any religious tradition is important because it adds facets to this, especially in a Canadian context where you have around somewhere between 77 and 80% of the population being Caucasian and largely of Christian backgrounds. Various traditions within that, obviously, but there's such a large proportion of that. Whenever you bring in different religious traditions, it allows for all of the society and the student body who are going to go into society and be participating at higher levels to really kind of take back something about what they're learning, whether they're learning it for personal reasons, like they might come from that background, or whether they're learning it to enrich themselves because they have interactions with people of different backgrounds and different religions and want to learn about that in an open way, and they can be able to interact with them and kind of better understand people as they move into different roles in society.
Hmm. So, what does the current religion studies program at University of Calgary look like, and how would the focus on Sikh studies look different with the proposed plan if it is to go through?
So right now we have a robust offering in different religious traditions. Primarily, if we look at what the Sikh Studies is offering us is a ability to kind of round out the South Asian offerings, which is something I think everybody in the faculty and the university is really excited about. So there's offerings in different aspects of the Hindu tradition. There's offerings in Buddhism, both kind of in South Asia and East Asia, and the ability to add. There's offerings in Islam as well, again, kind of broadly and a little bit in the region specific. And so with the Sikh tradition, adding that, it allows us a new lens to kind of bring in and enrich the focus on South Asia, and do that in a way that's focusing on the region as well as bringing in aspects of the religion and religious traditions. So it kind of rounds out an area, and that's kind of a really important and a growing a need, I think, in Canadian society. We're seeing great growth in South Asian diasporas, whether they be Sikh diasporas or diasporas that are connected to South Asia and come from other traditions. And you're also seeing, India on the global stage in many different ways. And so, there's again in our context in kind of the super technological atmosphere we live in, with lots of people your age interacting on lots of different types of media. I think it's really good to have these types of classes, and again, these spaces where people can kind of come in and take something back and reflect on how things are represented in all different ways in their lives. So we're looking to kind of fill in a space here and add a portion to a puzzle. And again, there's a large, obviously, Sikh diasporic community here, which will also be served with the community's diversity and kind of focus on building capacity while strengthening the relationships with communities on the ground. So those are both exciting aspects of this.
So, considering this program is specifically about Sikh history and values, what skills will it teach students that they can go ahead and use in their future careers? Like, why would I, a commerce major, take this course?
Yeah, actually, so this is a great question, Ishkirat, and I thank you for that. Um, the way that we've set this up, and this is a part of a long, this is 3 or 4 years of conversation at this point. Somewhat asking and talking to young people with these very questions, and the alumni as well, as people who had maybe felt like they missed out on an opportunity. We're actually not setting up the chair in this way at all, which is actually what is really cool and I think visionary. And we've been talking about this as a one of a kind chair, not just in the Sikh tradition, but this is actually a way to re-envision the role of religion in the universities and going forward, like you were saying. In the sense of kind of pushing past the boundaries that were put on religion in the context of Western colonialism and colonization of people, putting a little box around what religion means to people and keeping those people in that box. So to answer your question directly, this is actually a multidisciplinary chair, and the apparatus we're setting up is around Sikh thinking and Sikh thoughts. So it's around the intellectual traditions that evolved with the Sikh tradition, but also the expansiveness of those traditions, because in a certain time period in the 18th century, for instance, there was a universal humanistic kind of moment developing before it was interrupted by Western colonialism. And the Sikh tradition had a lot to do with that. There was people before that, there was people obviously after that, and they were integrating and talking across different traditions. But there was a moment there where there was this universalizing tendency, and it had South Asian roots, which is really exciting. And so we want to bring that to the university here in a multidisciplinary way, so that what we do in the courses, even right now as I teach in my introduction class, we look at the relevancy of the intellectual aspects, the conceptual apparatus, the frameworks that you get in different traditions, and the ethics, the morality. And we think about that in relation to current problems in our immediate atmosphere, in the province, for instance, nationally and also internationally. And we think that that is a way to kind of bring in that relevancy and have people thinking about how do they use what they inherit or what they learn, right? Because that's one of the benefits of university space. So I didn't inherit a knowledge of molecular genetics, for instance, even though I inherited my genetics, right? I went to university to learn about that and think about where I could apply it, right? And you can do the same thing ostensibly with this. So, specifically again with your question with business, business is a really important aspect of how we've set up the world, right? And so thinking about problems in terms of what types of models for business we can develop out of different traditions. There's an argument that can be made that many of the things that the Western tradition kind of brought in and thought of as innovation were actually borrowings. A lot of that was borrowed from Asian traditions and Middle Eastern traditions, and they were brought into and developed by Western nations, but then just called their own. We were left out of that picture. So part of this is bringing us back into the picture, bringing us back into the plane of thinking and innovating, and saying that we are equal players. And it's not just an equity question, but it's a question of this goes back to actually real history. Is that when those things were borrowed, there was a kind of a veil put on the people that those things were borrowed from, right? So one of the things that people have been trying really hard is to push back into those spaces. So I think once you are in the space, you can kind of think about questions of equity, equality, diversity, pluralism. Again, in business, business ethics. How do you bring traditional values? I'm not saying traditional in the sense of antiquated or old, but things that we live with and are important to us. How do we bring those into our business practices? How do we evolve business models that are relevant to ourselves, right? And so there's a lot you can do in the way this apparatus has been developed. And we're really excited about that because we think it'll be, again, like one of a kind and really will push boundaries and bring us into new ways to engage.
No, generally, when you look at any course offered by a university, you see it in the broader sense. So your point about applying it to other fields has personally just brought me closer to wanting to take this program. Yeah. And so from what you've observed so far, are most students in this program or who are looking to take the program some who practice the Sikh faith? And why would students from diverse backgrounds want to learn about Sikh heritage and culture?
Yeah, another great question. So I think, I'm very happy and proud to say that we've had students from every imaginable walk of life, background, tradition. There has been one of my favorites was there was an Irish student who was an international student who's just here for a semester. And she took the first time I taught the course in 2017. She took the course, and I was asking, for my own reasons, for my pedagogical interest, I was asking why students took the class, and she said, being an international student from Ireland, this would never be offered in her university, so she absolutely wanted to take it. We've had students from, East Asian backgrounds, Middle Eastern backgrounds, European backgrounds, obviously South Asian backgrounds of different types, and the different countries in South Asia as well, and people from just everywhere. Really kind of, so one of I think the things that's kind of bodes well for the Sikh tradition is there is some of us who are more visible than others, right? So with the beard and the turban, there's this visibility, and people see what Sikhs do, or they just see Sikhs, and they are intrigued, and they interact with Sikhs because there's a lot of us in the country, and there's a lot of us in the province here. So those relationships, I think, really are building blocks. You guys, when you're in schools, right? You're setting up. The framework and the curiosity for other students and other backgrounds who, if given the opportunity, like just like you're interested in the course, if other students who interact with you, your friends who are from other backgrounds, um, they're going to be curious, and they see that an expert in the tradition can give something more than an interpersonal relationship can. And when they deepen their knowledge on the tradition, they know that they're deepening their friendship with you too, and so they have something new to bring to your relationship as friends, right? And that, I think, that goes to businesses too. So going back to your original question, if I may, um, when you learn about something, a different tradition, you are working in engaging and enhancing diversity, because you have walked away with something from that course. When you go to the workspace, whether you're an entrepreneur and you're innovating and you're trying to do something new, or whether you're working in a pre-established business, you now have something that is going to help you interact with your peers, your colleagues. You can share that stuff, and you can build those interpersonal relationships. You might be able to work better with some of our great entrepreneurs here in Calgary, for instance, who are from the South Asian community. When you know something more about them, you can break some of those divides, build new relationships, and enhance business models and things like that. So it all kind of circles back. And really, it's again, like, it's been really surprising. I'm happy to say that there's a diverse group that are interested in it. I would say that about a third to a half of the students are from South Asian backgrounds. Most of those are Sikhs, but then the rest of the class is other backgrounds.
No, that's intriguing because you wouldn't think that. I know personally some of the classes that I have taken in high school alone, like I was about to go to a high school where Punjabi is offered as an option.
Yeah.
So it was expected. Even the teachers knew. They're like, "Oh, you probably speak Punjabi at home." I'm like, "Yes, I do. That's why I would take the class." So it's cool to see that it's diversity, right? Canada is built upon that. So it's nice to see it being brought to huge accredited institutions here as well. Yeah. So what has been the public response for the proposed plan, and what stage are you in currently to have the program finalized in terms of funding and for official steps?
Yeah, so we spent all of April really trying to fundraise hard, and kind of get a limelight, get some exposure, and make people familiar with what we're doing. And so I'm happy to say that we were able to raise enough funds with the university. The university was matching our funds, so they have something called Giving Day, where they offer matching for $2,500 to $2,500 between April and April 22nd. April 1st and April 22nd. My apologies. And so they were working with us really, again, in the spirit of that partnership and that building of community. And we were able to actually raise enough for the phase one, which is what as you mentioned, is the 3-year term, where we get to have a minor concentration in Sikh Studies. Students get to come in and do master's levels research in the department. And we're going to be holding annual conferences and consultation with the community across the province, and also in major metropolitan centers like Toronto and Vancouver, to hear back from the community and really kind of think about what the second phase should look like, in terms of making sure that we fulfill and genuinely do what we are setting out to do, which is work for community, and through community building, build knowledge for everybody. So we're going to be able to do those two things as well. The second phase is what you were mentioning. It's developing an endowed chair. So those of you in the audience who may not know, an endowed chair actually helps us get past one of the barriers, the second barrier I mentioned, which is financing. Endowed chairs allow for a certain amount of money to be collected that ensures the perpetuity of the the position as well as the research that goes along with the position. So what they do is they set up a kind of a fund that makes sure that this lasts for the entirety of the university. So you're kind of outside of the ebbs and flows of budgeting constraints, for instance, like we're facing now, right? The community would know that this is something, even though it's small in the large scale of what the university does, but it's significant, right? Because significant of the significance is in who's being served and the communities that are being served, and that is vouchsafed for the future. So that is the second phase, and the exciting part of that is we get to develop that with the community and partner with the university. So University of Calgary, I think, is a really innovative university in the way they've tried to address questions of diversity, plurality, and some of the past history of university institutions. So as we were mentioning, like our our understanding of South Asian knowledge largely is based on colonial interactions, and universities were set up during colonization, and they've continued from there. So they have their roots in kind of knowledge systems that were meant to enfranchise some people and disenfranchise other people, right? And so here in Calgary, they're really taking that critique seriously and trying to work for the betterment of all peoples. And the Sikh community is one of those people they're working with, but there's a whole assortment of people that, communities that otherwise would be marginalized that are, being engaged in different ways to allow for that. So that's going to be the second phase where we get to actually work with the university and develop, again, envision this in more of its fullness and kind of set up a plan to move forward. And we'll be doing more fundraising and things like that along that point to get to a bigger dollar.
So, based on the current position and what it would look like in the future, how would the program itself be structured for students in terms of coursework or time?
So we are, for right now, so I mean, first of all, I think one of the, I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier with online courses and online learning.
Mm-hmm.
The universities have been moving towards offering as a complement online learning. This was just something that with COVID became a necessity. But one of the things that online learning offers is students who aren't on campus are able to take those courses. So, for instance, I've taught in Intro to Asian Religions where it was online. I had students who were registered in the University of Calgary, but were doing like interns or semesters away in other parts of the world. One I think was in Australia, another one was in Asia somewhere, and there was another one in Europe, another student, and they were able to actually take the course because it was an online offering. So we'll be looking at, I think, probably a mix of online offerings and regular offerings so that students can have, I think that what I'm hearing from the conversations I've had is there's large interest with students, but I think timetabling and scheduling can be challenges for students. So we'll kind of, I think, do our best to get around those. The types of courses you can expect. So there'll still be the introduction to Sikhism, and then from there, what I do in the introduction to Sikhism is I teach a little bit of the concepts. Then we move on to talk about the central texts and the literature. We move on to talk about how the frameworks in the literature actually reach into the way that space and culture and practices are done. And then from there, we talk about a little bit of the history. So what we'll do is we'll, in the upper level courses, have like a Sikh philosophy course, Sikh literature, and then Sikh, culture, practice, traditions, things like that. We'll keep the diaspora course as well. And we'll look to, kind of, with the rest of my training, I'm focused on philosophy as well as theory of religion. So we'll look at upper level courses where we look at more kind of comparative things or more complicated issues. So it could be things like Sikhs in the public space, secularism and religious traditions, where we talk about not just the Sikh tradition, but other traditions that are challenged by secularism. Nonetheless, because of the way they present in the public space. And we can look at issues around, even for instance, this isn't a new thing, but, like with racism and religious traditions, Sikhs, again, like just with recently with the tragedy in Indianapolis, we're again thinking about these things. So I've written a little bit about the Oak Creek shooting, and now we're again faced with this reality here in North America, and that's a reality I think where it needs to be discussed and thought about, and students should have the space to engage it. So things like that in the upper levels would be the offerings that we would have.
Very nice. So, how can we help? If for me, the viewers, what do we offer that will bring your vision to life?
I think your enthusiasm, is what we need. Come and dialogue like we're doing. We're trying really hard to be public facing with this initiative, um, and we really want to kind of hear back from people. And we're going to do our best to kind of reach out through different types of media as well. So we have a Instagram channel. It's called Sikh Studies. There's a Twitter account on Sikh Studies as well. So I guess at Sikh Studies. These are all things I'm learning, by the way. So in the spirit of kind of having that engagement, I've been learning. You're being a lifelong learner. I'm happy to learn these things as well. But so we have those routes also to keep engaged with us. If and when we are in your neck of the woods in the next little while, if you're not in Calgary directly, come on out to events where we want consultations and things like that. And then as we move into fundraising, think about, this is, I think, an initiative that is worthy. And, the nice thing about what we've done with kind of the crowdsourcing and the crowdfunding and just kind of creating the awareness is really just asking people to give out of whatever their capacity is. And we're really kind of building a next generation place to engage with this. And again, that cycles back into all the places that we already occupy and we live in, whether those are spaces like the Gurdwara, different schools, the language programs that we've created. It's going to cycle back and enrich all those things. So it's really valuable. It's valuable for us, and it helps us with a future in this country, but in the globe as well. So the conversations are really important. Actually, I do want to kind of forefront that, and the feedback is going to be taken really seriously, and we want to continue to have that feedback. And again, obviously, there's this always kind of comes down to dollars at the end. So if we can meet those goals like we did, we actually exceeded our goal, which is really exciting. So whenever you do that, it really shows the excitement of that. So if we can continue the excitement, both in terms of learning, exchanging conversations, and the ability to get those funds in, it'd be really useful, and it'd be really powerful and beneficial for, so I'm born in this country, and, I didn't say this in the about me part of it, but, the personal part of this, the non-academic part of this was, I was probably around your age, 16, 17. And I, because of what was going around me in my life, in my vicinity, I became really concerned about, the values that we have as Sikhs, and as people from South Asia. What's the future of those in this country? When we face so many challenges outside of who we are, right? So I became really committed to that, and I think we need these spaces so that we can, when you learn about yourself and you learn to share that with others in these types of spaces, there's a benefit in terms of all the challenges, whether it's mental health issues, the trauma that people talk about, different types of traumas, different types of abuses that happen in the community, different types of challenges in terms of migration, right? Several generations after migration, it takes to settle into a space. Those are all challenges that can be, talked about and enhanced and overcome through this type of initiative. So again, that gives stability, and it gives back to our own institutions. and the institutions that we participate outside of it. It makes us better citizens.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all the information that you've given, specifically the perspectives that you've shared with us today. I know I've learned a lot, not just about the program, but what it would offer for me and for others like me as well. So thank you so
Yeah, thank
much
you for
for the
having me.
insight.
No, I
No, it
appreciate the
was,
conversation.
thank you. And thank you to our viewers for joining us here today. And if you are interested in learning a little bit more about what we've talked about here, you can view the links in the caption, which has many more resources and links regarding their social medias and their websites and other information. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back next Wednesday with another episode of Gen Z Unfiltered. And until then, on behalf of Amrit, peace out.